Welcome to Side 5 of Assertive Communication Skills with author and presenter Carol Price. As we explore this section of your assertiveness toolbox, Carol will show you how and when to use the 5 key assertiveness skills, no matter which of the 4 communication styles the other person may be using. Once again, here is Carol Price.
The 5 key assertiveness skills allow you to put into real-life practice all the components you've learned to maximize success. If you'll turn to page 18 in your workbook, we will look at the first of those skills. It is called declarative statement, and it does use escalation if necessary.
Oh, good. Mary finished the report I needed. No, this isn't right.
Hi, Donna. Did you get the report you asked? Oh, good. I see you're reading it now.
Yeah, and content-wise, it looks good. But I'll need you to reprint it using the standard Helvetica font. It's too hard to read the way you've got it now. So I'll need an additional 4 copies, 3-hole punched with covers. Can you please have that for me by 10? Thanks.
Oh, sure thing.
A declarative statement is an I statement that tells the other person clearly and specifically what you want. It's made without apology, although it is delivered calmly and rationally. It does not need to include the reason for what you want, although sometimes it could. If you're dealing with your boss, you may want to give your reasons. However, reasons can sometimes bog down the discussion into an argument over whether your reasons are good enough. What exactly did Donna want?
Different typeface.
That's one of them, a different typeface. What else did you hear that she wanted? How many copies?
4.
She was specific. She needed 4. And did she want something special on those copies? Covers. And good. And a 3-hole punch as well. What was her manner in asking for it? She was direct. Good word. Polite, you bet. Calm. She wasn't going crazy that you've got to get this. Why didn't you read my mind? What else?
Specific.
Very specific. And in a declarative statement, that is one of the most important words you will remember. We need to ask for what we want. Did she seem to expect that she was going to get what she wanted? Sure, sure. Because as she's asking, giving all of these details, she knows as well that she's got the best chance in getting what she's asking for. Did she give a reason or an explanation for asking for those changes? No. And in fact, did she need to?
No.
Absolutely not. If she's a boss, she may choose not to give details. Could she have?
Yes.
Whose decision would it have been to give those details? Certainly. And once we recognize that if we want to give details, it's up to us, it makes sense. Now, if we're not the boss in this exact same situation to appear, would a more detailed explanation be appropriate?
Yeah.
Could be. Why?
Increase compliance.
Good for you. Increase compliance, sure. Because if I'm asking you to help me out or to do it again, and we are at an even level, it is perfectly acceptable to say, because of this I need, and would you be more likely at that point to comply? Sure. And did you notice that Mary was given a firm deadline?
Yes.
What was it? 10 o'clock. Good for you. In declarative statements, we minimize transmission errors from the encoder to the decoder, maximizing the likelihood that the outcome will match the original intent.
Oh, good. Mary finished the report I needed. No, this isn't right.
Hi, Donna. Did you get the report you asked? Oh, good. I see you're reading it now.
Yeah, and content-wise, it looks good. But I'll need you to reprint it using the standard Helvetica font. It's too hard to read the way you've got it now. So I'll need an additional 4 copies, 3-hole punched with covers. Can you please have that for me by 10? Thanks.
Oh, sure thing.
Now let's look at a second skill.
Hey, what's going on, boss?
Oh, I'm late for a meeting, that's what. Hey, listen, I need you to take care of some things while I'm gone.
Sure.
Good, because I've already got Denise tied up on some other projects. I need to have 25 copies, collated and bound in presentation folders by 2:30.
But Denise usually...
I need you to do it. Denise is busy. Just get them to me by 2:30, okay? I can't believe it. It's past 2:30 and I don't have those reports I need.
Hey, boss.
Where are the reports I asked you to copy?
Right. I couldn't get to it, but Denise will. Soon.
I see. Well then, we need to talk because we've got a problem.
Well, the reports are gonna be copied.
That much I'm sure of. Please don't sit down because you don't really have the time. Now, I asked you to run 25 copies of this report by 2:30. The copies are not made.
Well, I was going to...
The why does not matter. Now they will have to be done late and brought into the middle of a very important presentation, which will be a distracting interruption. So, stop what you're doing right now. You will personally make the copies and bring them into the meeting. And I need you to really understand that this can never happen again. It's embarrassing for me, and it's embarrassing for you. So, just finish copying them and deliver the reports into the executive conference room.
Right. I'm sorry about my mistake.
Well, being sorry is all well and good. Just make sure it doesn't happen again, because that's even better. Great. Now I'm late again.
What we just saw is called assertive confrontation. This skill does 3 specific things, and I'd like you to take a note of each. Number 1, it describes the unacceptable behavior. Number 2, it assigns consequences. And third, it gives expectations of future behavior. And let me go through that one more time. Number 1, it describes what just happened. Second, it assigns the consequences. And third, it gives expectations so that person is going to know what you expect from them the next time. In this confrontation, John did all 3 components well. When he said the copies weren't made, he provided what? That description, so they knew exactly what they were talking about at that moment. When he directed Bill to make them and bring them into the meeting, noting there was going to be a disruption and embarrassment, he detailed what? Consequences, certainly. And in telling Bill he did not want this to happen again, he set what up? Expectations for that future behavior, sure. Note that in this example, only the facts were addressed. And this is a very key point. He did not attack personally. John did not call Bill stupid. He did not call him lazy. And he never, not once, did he question his commitment. And in fact, by sticking to those facts, John is much more likely to have Bill want to produce well without any get-even intent lurking somewhere below the surface. Now, this is a tricky question. What was John's goal in the confrontation? And remember, it's too late for the copies to be made on time. What was the goal at the point of confrontation? Holly?
Next time he'll get what he wants.
So next time, he's not going to be late to a meeting because of copies. Next time, he will have what he needs in his hand. And next time, nobody has to be the brunt of, you didn't do as I had asked. Is this mistake likely to be repeated? No. Good for you.
Hey, what's going on, boss?
Oh, I'm late for a meeting, that's what. Hey, listen, I need you to take care of some things while I'm gone.
Sure.
Good, because I've already got Denise tied up on some other projects. I need to have 25 copies, collated and bound in presentation folders by 2:30.
But Denise usually...
I need you to do it. Denise is busy. Just get them to me by 2:30, okay? I can't believe it. It's past 2:30 and I don't have those reports I need.
Hey, boss.
Where are the reports I asked you to copy?
Right. I couldn't get to it, but Denise will. Soon.
I see. Well then, we need to talk because we've got a problem.
Well, the reports are gonna be copied.
That much I'm sure of. please don't sit down because you don't really have the time. Now, I asked you to run 25 copies of this report by 2:30. The copies are not made.
Well, I was going to.
The why does not matter. Now they will have to be done late and brought into the middle of a very important presentation, which will be a distracting interruption. So, stop what you're doing right now. You will personally make the copies and bring them into the meeting. And I need you to really understand that this can never happen again. It's embarrassing for me, and it's embarrassing for you. So, just finish copying them and deliver the reports into the executive conference room.
Right. I'm sorry about my mistake.
Well, being sorry is all well and good. Just make sure it doesn't happen again, because that's even better. Great. Now I'm late again.
So let's move to the third key assertiveness skill.
No, Arnie, this part is fine. The colors will work and the design is clean. The creative staff did a great job.
Great, good enough for me. I'm out of here.
Wait, Arnie, that's not the problem.
Elizabeth, it's late. I'd like to go home, see my wife, my kids.
I know, and I'd like to go home to my family too, but Mr. Ratner has moved the presentation time up, 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, and marketing just told me that the figures they used for their projections were off by 5%. That means that these overheads need to be redone, and that means...
And that means that I have to do them? Elizabeth, I already have a huge backlog of materials from other departments, like this one from production. I just can't ignore them and do your stuff. Remember, my department is understaffed, not yours. I can't even get someone in to do the filing or process the paperwork.
Okay, hold on. I'll tell you what. Bob Lafferty over in production owes me a favor. I'll call him and explain the problem, and we'll push his deadline by just half a day. He's got the slack time. I've seen his schedule.
Yeah, but...
Also, my administrative assistant and I will come to your department for a full day to help get you caught up on the paperwork. I was going to take a vacation day, but I really need this done.
No, even a full day wouldn't be enough.
Okay, a day and a half. Plus, I get production off your back, and I tell Ratner what a great job you've done.
Great. All right, it's a done deal then.
Fine. Now let's get to work. Here are the new figures we need to incorporate into the presentation.
What we just saw is a skill of compromise, which is coming to an agreement which satisfies the basic, and I note here, basic needs of both parties. Usually both sides give something up to reach this agreement. It may be a win-win, but it's not always. In this example, Elizabeth did have 3 specific things that allowed her to effectively compromise. First, she stated what she wanted, and that was the overheads to be done. Second, she listened to what Arnie needed and acknowledged his concerns. What were some of Arnie's concerns?
Filing.
Filing, for the backlog on filing, absolutely. Did you hear some others?
Understaffed.
Understaffed, that his department maybe was the only one, sure.
He wanted to be home with his family.
Wanted to be home with his wife and kids, sure. And what else? Jeff?
Other deadlines that needed to be met?
Certainly. And third, Elizabeth offered solutions to his problem and made those solutions conditional on him helping her. Now think back. What did she offer him? Did you hear one?
She was going to have her assistant and herself come in and do some extra work for him.
In fact, they were going to do a day, and there was a compromise inside the compromise, as you saw, when he was quiet, and then she said, a day and a half. So they even upped the ante, so to speak. Did you hear anything else she said she was willing to do?
Get production off his back.
Get these guys in production to leave them alone. Good one. Yes. Yes?
Oh, she was going to give up her day of vacation.
And actually not go away. Sure, a day of vacation was going to be given up, indeed. And did you hear any other that she was willing to give up to get what she wanted? Please.
Yes. She was going to see that Mr. Ratner had a note that told that he was doing a good job.
So on top of everything else, she was going to make this guy who didn't want to really help but instead wanted to go home the hero in the whole situation. Now, is this going to make extra work for Elizabeth? Yes. You bet it is. But it did work out to benefit both. She got what she needed, the report, the overheads redone, Arnie was able to reduce his backlog, reduce his paperwork, and get a good kudo from Mr. Ratner. The key to compromise is for both to give, but both to also receive. Although compromise sometimes has a negative connotation because you didn't get everything that you want, it's important to note here how it was done. Donna guided rather than pleaded or demanded. She used I language rather than guilt-laden you language. Her body and her vocal cues reinforced her message. What verbal cues did you hear as she began to negotiate her compromise?
She paused to give herself time to think about the situation.
To maybe get over the kind of thing, to be able to stay on track. The pause is a good touch. Did she acknowledge by saying, I know? And that's real important. She allowed him to have his concerns, and it wasn't done in a shrill or a sarcastic, yeah, I know. And that certainly is an easy way that we could. Please.
She let him know that she had the same concerns also, that she would like to go home too.
Yeah, she matched him, didn't she? Good for you. Even in a compromise, both Donna and Arnie were able to walk away as winners.
No, Arnie, this part is fine. The colors will work and the design is clean. The creative staff did a great job.
Great, good enough for me. I'm out of here.
Wait, Arnie, that's not the problem.
Elizabeth, it's late. I'd like to go home, see my wife, my kids.
I know, and I'd like to go home to my family too, but Mr. Ratner has moved the presentation time up, 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, and marketing just told me that the figures they used for their projections were off by 5%. That means that these overheads need to be redone, and that means...
And that means that I have to do them? Elizabeth, I already have a huge backlog of materials from other departments, like this one from production. I just can't ignore them and do your stuff. Remember, my department is understaffed, not yours. I can't even get someone in to do the filing or process the paperwork.
Okay, hold on. I'll tell you what. Bob Lafferty over in production owes me a favor. I'll call him and explain the problem, and we'll push his deadline by just half a day. He's got the slack time. I've seen his schedule.
Yeah,
Also, my administrative assistant and I will come to your department for a full day to help get you caught up on the paperwork. I was going to take a vacation day, but I really need this done.
No, even a full day wouldn't be enough.
Okay, a day and a half. Plus, I get production off your back, and I tell Ratner what a great job you've done.
Great. All right, it's a done deal then.
Fine. Now let's get to work. Here are the new figures we need to incorporate into the presentation.
Now let's take a look at the fourth assertiveness skill.
And although there is a variance from budget, I think that doesn't take into account the quality improvement we were able to make, along with the collateral drop in returns and dissatisfied customers. Gee, the rest of us had to be here on time, John. I'm glad you could finally join us.
Well, I'm glad you're glad, Tom.
What we just saw is the first level of a skill called camouflage, and it's called non-response. There are 3 levels, and I'd like you again to note these. The first, non-response. If we were taking a picture of this, what were the actual events that happened in this situation?
Stop the meeting.
Stop the meeting. Couldn't he have just easily let him sit down and go on and maybe deal later? He didn't choose to do that. He thought, ooh, let's make a big deal of this, huh? Good for you. Good one. What else?
Sarcasm.
Sarcasm. Whoa, you bet. Sarcasm is a marvelous technique to get us off guard. And out of curiosity, for how many of you does it work? How many of you can get baited? Yeah. What else did you see?
Attacked him in public.
Attacked him in public. Do you know anybody that does that? No names, no names. Do you know anybody that does that? Yeah, and they're difficult for us to deal with, aren't they? Yeah. Well, what was the response? Nothing. Woo, good answer. Let's see what happens with this. Is it really true that nothing happened? Isn't the fact that he didn't do anything in itself a response? In fact, by making eye contact, even though he chose not to say one vocal word, he did in fact respond. In using a non-response, you can maintain your composure when attacked. You can take time to think of an appropriate vocal response, and you're not choosing to stoop to an inappropriate level. Would there be times that this non-response is not strong enough? Give me a couple of examples on that.
Maybe if the boss is yelling at you and you're not responding, he might get more infuriated if you don't say anything.
Sure, so you're running a risk if you don't complete the transaction, so to speak. I'll take that one, you bet. How about another?
Or if you're asked for a response.
If you're directly asked for one, yeah. And I could indeed view your giving me none as a reason for me to come back at you? Absolutely. How about another one?
Maybe in a one-on-one situation it would be more appropriate.
Yeah, so if it's one-on-one, something's got to occur. And the one that strikes me is, what if this is the third meeting, the third time he's done it to me? Am I willing to again let it go in this non-response manner? No. And most of us would not. We might on a first one. Yeah, might even on a second. But somehow that third becomes, enough, we're going to deal. In front of people who think or need to see you as strong might be an additional reason for us to go beyond that first level of camouflage. And the last, and I think most intimate of reasons, if I use a non-response, and by doing it, I would internally beat myself up about not dealing for weeks and weeks and weeks. I've done that. Have you? You bet. You need to be comfortable using the non-response for it to work effectively. It should be a choice, not just an excuse for passive behavior. Here's the second level of camouflage.
Is there some reason you need to know why I was late, Tom?
Yeah. Why don't you just tell us?
Well, I'd be happy to after the meeting, but I think we've taken up enough time here.
The second level of camouflage is called limited response. Again, please note that in your workbook. This time again, if we were behind a camera, what did you see John do?
He acknowledged he was late.
He acknowledged he was late, and that became an okay thing in John's mind. Sure. What else?
He diverted the attention from a personal attack to the issues.
Excellent. He went from a personal attack to an issue which took him off the hook. Good. Please.
He was willing to give a reason, but at a later time.
He was willing to give a reason at a later time, which automatically made who the culprit in this whole division in the meeting? Yeah, the other man, who had no business doing that. Excellent. He changed the tone of the conflict and held Tom accountable for his inappropriate behavior. Now, wait a minute. Wasn't John inappropriate for coming in late? Yeah. But, and it was a legitimate inappropriateness, and did Tom have the right to attack? No. So what John was doing here is saying, yes, I am late. However, limited response means going back to just one piece of it. And the piece that he used was, I'm late, did you need to know the reasons? By keeping his cool while Tom did not, John demonstrated to his teammates that he was in control of his emotions, even if Tom was not. He also moved any potential conflict out of public view. Can you think of any cases or any situations where you would not want to use that limited response? Please.
If you can't keep your emotions in check, or you're afraid that you're going to be out of control.
And that's a very important point, because if I think I try If I get one thing out and I'm going to be so shaky or I'm going to be so uncomfortable or so anticipatory of uh-oh, then it may not make sense to indeed invite a response back. Any other reason? Please.
You're afraid they'll come back at you?
With another response. We very often see people using a limited response, and they can do it the first level, but then on the second, they fall apart. Because I'm prepared for one, I've got it backlogged, but I'm not prepared for a second, or heaven forbid, a third. Remember what we just saw. Tom actually escalated the encounter by making a second attack. He said, yeah, why don't you tell us why you were late? John, however, unexpectedly, was able to think clearly, to respond quickly, and in fact disarmed Tom's attack.
This is the end of Side 5. Please turn this tape over to continue with this special career track presentation of Assertive Communication Skills with Carol Price. Welcome to Side 6 of this special career track presentation, Assertive Communication Skills with author and presenter Carol Price. On the last side, you began to explore the first of the 5 key assertiveness skills, the declarative statement, confrontation, and compromise, along with the first 2 elements of camouflage, the non-response and the limited response. Let's join Carol now as she continues with element 3 of camouflage, simply called clouding. Once again, here's Carol.
Now let's take a look at the third and final level of camouflage.
You know, I've always liked that tie on you, Tom.
What?
No, I mean it. Blue. It's your color.
Right. Yes, well, I suppose. Do you really like it?
This response is called clouding. By definition, it means responding without any logical connection to what was just said. And in fact, the more bizarre, the better in using clouding. Tom asked John why he was late. John responded, "It's a nice tie you're wearing," and referenced the color on him. Tom was caught off guard by the unexpected turn of the conversation, rendering him unable to escalate. Now, think, when might clouding not be in your best interest to use as a technique? Please.
When the person doesn't have a sense of humor for what's going on.
I think that's a real important point. When the person does not have a sense of humor and may even say, "Tell me exactly what you mean by referencing my tie," and then you're back involved in the whole situation. Good answer, yeah.
If you've had circumstances where you've been late a lot.
So if there's some legitimacy here, that maybe you need to take some of the heat. Good answer, yeah. Any other time?
When it's a real serious or threatening situation.
And I'm going to break those in half because those are 2 answers. If you don't want to be seen as frivolous in answering back, you bet, in a serious situation, or if indeed it has become so somber and so serious, or perhaps even threatening, that you don't want to escalate to that point. Excellent. Yes?
I don't think you'd want to do it with a complete stranger. Maybe somebody.
And why would that be?
You may think you're nuts.
You may think you're nuts, okay. And part of not knowing the other person is you may not know what his response could be. Good for you. Let's look at a couple of additional forms of clouding. And I'm going to give you a clouding response for each one, but I want you thinking of some. And I'm going to ask you for some of them. And I give extra credit when they're bizarre. So let's see where we go. The first, as you're trying on the latest business suit, the saleswoman looks at you and says, "Amazing how all women think they can wear short skirts. Clouding response might be, and what time does the store close tonight? Give me a more bizarre one. Come on, who's got one?
Is that plant new?
Is that plant new? Yeah, good. And what occurs in the first response and your response, and I want one more, and I want someone on the edge on this one, is that all of a sudden, we don't know what just happened. We don't know if they're even dealing with us. The problem is they're looking right at us when they do it. So obviously, I'm dealing with a crazy person. And in a situation like this, does it pay to deal any further with that crazy person? Probably not. Now, you're on the edge. Give me one more bizarre response. Reba.
Is there a Taco Bell in the mall?
Hey, is there a Taco Bell in the mall? What I want you to hear is it's a way to diffuse, but it's also a way of saying, not me. I'm not going to be involved in that. Let's look at a second one. My 5-year-old son just learned how to count to 1,000. It's unfortunate that yours can't. Clouding response. We looked at the new Camaros yesterday, and they are hot cars. Give me another clouding response.
Do you know how to tell if the egg is like ready to be taken or if it's going to be a chicken?
Wonderful. Wonderful. And you know what we all did? When she gave that response, we're all trying to think. Do we know that? You got us way off the track. Good for you. Are you known as relatively bizarre?
Yeah.
All right. So that fits. Good, good. How about one more? Please.
Are those fingernails real?
Oh, are those fingernails real? In other words, we want someone way off base. We want them to have no idea what you're doing. Excellent examples. In the example we saw with Tom and John, Tom's intent was to bait John and publicly humiliate him. In using camouflage, baiting doesn't happen, humiliation doesn't happen, and in fact, respect is most often the outcome. The only loser in this situation was Tom. In using this technique, you are able to rein in the situation away from character assassination or innuendo and back to a certain civility. When used effectively, camouflage can diffuse a potentially hostile confrontation.
And although there is a variance from budget, I think that doesn't take into account the quality improvement we were able to make along with the collateral drop in returns and dissatisfied customers. Gee, the rest of us had to be here on time, John. I'm glad you could finally join us.
Well, I'm glad you're glad, Tom. Is there some reason you need to know why I was late, Tom?
Yeah. Why don't you just tell us?
Well, I'd be happy to after the meeting, but I think we've taken up enough time here. You know, I've always liked that tie on you, Tom.
What?
No, I mean it. Blue. It's your color.
Right. Yes, well, I suppose. Do you really like it?
Let's look at the final assertiveness skill.
All we have to do now is have Ron from Finance sign on the bottom line with that sales rep. What's her name?
Judy Graziano. By the way, where is Ron?
Well, he said he'd wait for us at Ratner's office. That's where Miss Graziano is now.
Wait. He's alone with her? Oh, no. You know he thinks he's the universe's own special gift to women. He says the wrong thing. We're looking at another $500,000.
Well, what can you tell me about this system?
Well, I'm here today to talk about our service contract.
Judy, good to see you.
Your timing always was rotten, John. I was just going over some of the finer details with Ms. Graziano.
Yeah, I'm sure you were, Ron.
Good to see you both again.
Nice to see you.
As I was trying to explain to Ron, our service policy guarantees that if the system fails or comes offline for any reason, we can have a technician on the premises within 4 hours.
That seems very clear.
Let me get this straight. We break this new system, and we have you on our doorstep within 4 hours?
Ron.
I just want to make sure we cross all the T's and dot all the I's.
As I said, we can have a technician on the premises within 4 hours.
Well, if I can have you within 4 hours, we'll buy the system, and I don't care what it costs.
I know what you're asking, and I want you to really understand what I'm promising you here. If the system fails, we can have a qualified technician on the scene within 4 hours. Now, if your questions continue along these inappropriate lines, my presentation will end here, and my company will withdraw from the sale.
No, Judy, that's perfectly fine. Listen, you can deal with us.
I'm sorry.
Really, we want this.
What you just saw was the fifth skill called accountability. And what we saw in interaction was Ron asking Judy a totally off-the-subject, inappropriate question and expecting either a non-response or for her to be a victim in his game, proving his prowess. Instead, Judy made Ron accountable for both the remark and the potential increased cost of $500,000. How did Judy make Ron accountable? What did she say?
Subject continues along.
If you continue along these inappropriate lines, she nailed him immediately for what he was doing. Now, do you think that he expected to be nailed? No. And in this case, do you think he expected the other two people at the table to back him or back her? To back him. So not only did he not get the response he wanted, a non-response or kind of I'm embarrassed, what am I going to do, head down behavior, what he got was total accountability. And in fact, the future of this interaction depended on him and his appropriate behavior. Now, could there be a time that assigning accountability might not be in your best interest?
If you're unsure of the facts.
Good for you. If you're unsure of the facts, in other words, I'm going to give you accountability, and when you come back at me, you're righter than I am. Indeed so. You think of another?
If you're a subordinate, you might not want to say you might want to say I'm not comfortable.
Sure. And is it even possible that if you're the subordinate and you have a boss maybe like Mr. Ratner? Yeah. So there are some times that assigning accountability might not be in your best interest. Or perhaps when responsibility isn't clearly established or when it could endanger a future relationship. For example, giving that accountability, as you said to Mr. Ratner, in a board meeting might not allow your relationship to prosper. When using accountability, which may very well be seen as the most difficult technique of the 5, you haven't fanned the flames of emotional confrontation. You simply hold the other person accountable for their own unacceptable behavior. This is a perfect example of why we need to assess our risk before we choose to go to battle. If accountability will lose you an account or a sale or a job, then you really need to consider the consequences before you act. Her decision in this situation was that corrective behavior weighed heavier than the benefits she gained from the account. Your choice in your specific situation may be different and certainly may change from situation to situation.
I know what you're asking, and I want you to really understand what I'm promising you here. If the system fails, we can have a qualified technician on the scene within 4 hours. Now, if your questions continue along these inappropriate lines, my presentation will end here, and my company will withdraw from the sale.
No, Judy, that's perfectly fine. Listen, you can deal with us. Sorry, really, we want this.
Now turn to the appendix in your workbook and complete the exercise, choosing to solve that problem in one of the 5 assertiveness skills we just detailed. When you choose the skill, use 4 to 5 sentences that would make the solution effective. We looked at the techniques, the skills, and the tools that allow you to respond assertively in challenging situations. Remember that assertiveness is a choice that only you can make. You will become prepared to make that choice effectively and comfortably. So now let's take a look at the 4 communication styles we've seen, combined with the 5 assertiveness skills we've covered. Turn to page 19 of your workbook, and we will start. In dealing with passive people, now remember, they are the ones who want others to read their minds. They accept losing as an outcome because they usually do lose. They rarely speak up for what they want, or when they do it so tentatively, so apologetically, or so ineffectively that other people don't respond or provide what that passive person wants. As you listen to the following situation, think about the answer to this question. Of the 5 techniques we covered in Volume 3, and let me review them for you: declaration, confrontation, compromise, camouflage, and accountability, which would be the most effective strategy for dealing with this passive person? Check off the technique or techniques that you think would be most effective. Once you've chosen the style or the styles, please write 3 to 4 sentences as to what that style would really sound like if you chose to use it.
Great, you're right on time, because we've got a lot of work to do for the sales conference coming up.
So I would imagine.
I know, I've been going through everything we need, basically pulling the background from past conferences. I've gone through the budget from last year, and taking into account some of the additions that they want this year, I think I've come up with a workable plan.
Okay.
And as for the timetable, well, it only looks bad on paper, but after you get into it, you'll realize it's even worse than it looks.
Well, I'm here to help.
I've broken out the project tasks into 2 headings, internal and external. The internal tasks deal with the sales staff, including the invitations, the opening night reception, keynote address, you know.
Uh-huh.
And the external tasks are focused more around the logistical part of the conference, dealing with the hotel, setting up schedules, some number crunching.
Okay. So, what do you want me to do?
Well, just tell me which set of tasks, internal or external, that you'd like to handle. We'll go from there.
Oh, well, it doesn't matter much to me. You decide, and then whatever you don't do, I'll take care of.
So before we answer the actual questions to this situation, let me ask you an equally as important one. How many of you have ever needed or had to deal with someone like Sandra? How many of you have done that? Let me just see a show of hands. Aren't they frustrating? Don't you know that they want to say something, but they just won't spit it out? And in fact, isn't the easiest way to deal with that passive person just to go like gangbusters, just to roll right over them? How many of you have ever knowingly done that? Yeah. How many of you have ever done that to your children? You've given them 10 seconds to answer. They haven't chosen to answer in 10 seconds. So you assume, all right, Mom's going to make the decision, Dad's going to make the decision. It's easier to deal with passive people by allowing them to have no input. What is the best strategy for dealing with this kind of person? Let's look at one possible right way response.
Look, Sandy, these are 2 really different sets of tasks. One is dealing with people and the other with logistics and schedules. I'm sure you have a preference.
Oh, well, it doesn't matter much to me. You decide, and then whatever you don't do, I'll take care of.
Sandy, it seems to me that you might prefer one set of tasks over the other. Now, if you tell me which one it is, you can do it. But if you don't tell me, I'll just have to guess, and I'll probably guess wrong.
Well, if it's all the same to you, I'd really like to work with the logistics. You know, the hotel and the numbers, and let you deal with the invitations and the sales reps. I'm not very good with those kinds of things.
Great. Well, we're on our way, so let's break out these plans and see where we are.
This response gives Sandra permission to speak up about what she wants, and most importantly, holds her accountable for her not getting what she wants if she doesn't speak up. And it works. You saw Sandra respond. What is the best strategy in dealing with this kind of person? As the example, as you saw Sandra. Who would like to give me an answer on what style you chose and what language you used to reinforce that style? Kat, what style did you choose?
I chose declaration.
Okay, and what did you say?
I would say something to the effect that since this is such a big project, I divided it into two categories, internal and external, and I need you to handle one of those categories. With your creativity and attention to detail, I think you do very well with the internal portion. Are you willing to take ownership of the internal portion and the task involved?
And that's an excellent declaration. Excellent. I'd like us to go one more step, just going a bit further with your declaration in the following way. Did anybody get the idea that if given that, if I'm being passive, I may still choose to stay passive and say, oh, that's what Kat wants me to do. That's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to take yours as the exact perfect intro, and let me add to it. Did anybody add another style to that? Okay, Holly, what did you do with this one?
Well, I added specific tasks as well, so that she knows exactly what is expected of her.
Good.
What and when.
Good.
I want 15 calls made, I want 18 copies bound, and I would like this done by 12:30. Any questions?
So no questions there on what we're expecting, and no questions on what she better produce. Interesting that both of the techniques you're using here just scream of assertiveness. Just absolutely scream of assertiveness. Excellent. The primary technique used in this situation was accountability. Michelle told Sandra that she needed to make a decision or the decision would be made for her, and that decision would probably not be to her liking. In holding Sandra accountable, did both people end up getting the best possible outcome? What do you think? Yes. Sure. A logical response certainly is yes, because Michelle wanted the best work from Sandra. And she knew that if Sandra really would prefer a portion of it, she would do a better job. It's important to note that there was a secondary technique that was used in this response. Did you find it? And in truth you did. And your responses indicated that. It was declaration. Sandra actually said what she would prefer, which allowed her, in this case, to number one, get it, and number two, to take a measure of control back over her work. Both of those results contribute to Sandra's doing a better and more complete job. Of the three remaining techniques, why were they not the best possible choice? Let's take a look at confrontation and decide why that wouldn't be your best primary choice. First reason is if Michelle had confronted, she would have won. And the question has to be, what would she have won? Would she have gotten the best work from Sandra? What do you bet? No, probably not. Would she have gotten Sandra's cooperation and respect? Again, probably not. Confrontation speaks directly to consequences. Does Michelle want to establish consequential behavior at this point? And most importantly, do you think it's necessary? No. As soon as I begin to establish consequences for someone doing a good job, I'm running the risk of the easiest response to simply not do the job. In this case, confrontation is taking a big stick to a very small problem. But what about compromise? Do you see that as a possibility or an option? Good. Why not, Jane?
I don't think there's any dealing to be done.
There's no compromise. The point that's real clear here is that they're splitting a project in half. There are different tasks, but they're both on the same side. There's no compromise side to side for getting the total project finished. There were two opposing types of tasks, but there are not two opposing sides. Both Sandra and Michelle, again, are on the same side. Now, if you think that camouflage might work, let's look at the three applications. In non-response, Sandra would get nothing, and that's certainly in nobody's best interest. Michelle would have affected no change whatsoever in Sandra's behavior. Remember, in dealing with a passive person, it's so easy to roll right over them. In limited response, Sandra could have picked up on the one piece she wanted to and hoped, and get this, or maybe hinted by a raised eyebrow or a smile, but again, remember, that's hoping and that's hinting. And it's also hardly ever effective. If you don't ask for what you want, you probably are not going to get it. If from Michelle's point of view she had accepted limited response, Michelle would have been relying upon visual and vocal cues that may or may not have told the entire story. The result of that reliance could easily have been a less than top-notch performance by Sandra. And let me ask another question here. Do you know people who have mastered the art of the vocal and the visual cues to send a message to you that isn't really the accurate message? Have you worked with people like that you can't read their face? Have you worked with people like that seem to always have the right demeanor? And in fact, have any of you ever put on a face that didn't tell the truth? How many of you will admit in front of the world that you have on occasion done that? Absolutely. Now, what about the final component of camouflage called clouding? Had Michelle used clouding in this situation, remembering that the definition of clouding is responding to anything other than the information at hand, Michelle would have been giving Sandra no opportunity to perform well. In fact, clouding has no place here whatsoever if either Michelle or Sandra choose to stay on task. And in fact, any response from the camouflage levels, which again are used for not dealing rather than dealing, would have been totally inappropriate. This is a situation needing to be addressed, worked on, and completed with facts.
This is the end of Side 6. Please replace this with Side 7 to continue with assertive communication skills with Carol Price.